Jared Goff is staying put where he is for the time being for the next several years. T Higgins is not. There are several franchise tags getting thrown around the league. There are veterans moving from team to team. And we've got a schedule preview of the 2024 season. The 49ers and the Chiefs will play a rematch in the regular season. Aaron Rodgers gets some sort of revenge. And we've got Super Bowl odds and we've got awards odds to discuss. Maybe a pick for Rookie of the Year. Let's talk everything relevant in the NFL as of 2024, mid-May. This is your favorite offseason show in the NFL. Player Profiler Today, starting now. Good evening and welcome back to Player Profiler Today, your favorite offseason show for everything NFL and fantasy football. We are live at the Player Profiler news channel as we are every day of the NFL offseason. I'm your Tuesday host, Ahaan Rungta at Ahaan Rungta on Twitter. Good evening to everybody in chat with us right now live on the Player Profiler news channel, including Jamie, who says good evening. Always happy to see you, Jamie, in chat, always supporting and always talking football with us. If you are listening to this in the form of as a form of podcast, make sure you tune in on the Player Profiler news channel every single day with all the beautiful hosts and myself. I'm your Tuesday host, so let's get started talking about some NFL, everything relevant, lightning speed as of mid-May. Start off with the obvious. We've got players moving to new teams, but we got to talk about Jared Goff, who's agreed to a 40-year, $212 million extension with $170 million guaranteed for the Detroit Lions. Everybody knows about the feel-good story that is the Detroit Lions in 2023. We might go back and look at this Detroit Lions, Los Angeles Rams trade, the Stafford Goff trade, the mega blockbuster as one of the bigger win-wins of this generation. I mean, the Lions haven't won a Super Bowl yet out of this, obviously, but they have an elite core in place, especially offensively. They're going to be good for a long time coming, and Jared Goff playing like a top 10 quarterback throughout a majority of the regular season has been a big storyline too, that this man has proven himself once and for all that this man is a starter in the NFL. He can win you playoff games against good teams, against good defenses. So this man has done that. And as an OG Jared Goff fan, I will say this. Jared Goff does not belong in the, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson tier, the perennial MVP candidates type. But I can still be happy for a guy who I believed in as a starter in the NFL. Ever since he was drafted number 1 overall, and then people were saying he might be a bust, I stuck with him even after the failed Super Bowl. So Jared Goff, very happy for him. Let's talk about a couple of stats. Last year in the 2023 regular season, number 5 in true completion rate. Obviously playing behind a good offensive line and some fantastic weapons, but he still has to do his job. And some weapon agnostic stats also looking good as well. True passer rating at number 8 in the NFL. Noteworthily, there were 27 drops on his passes, which were the 3rd most in the NFL. Something that we don't talk a lot about in the Lions offense just because they were so good anyway. But Jared Goff, didn't get help from receivers in the hands department. Number 1 in accuracy rating versus man coverage last year. Number 4 in accuracy rating when he was clean in the pocket. So some great stats for Jared Goff all around, and he gets this mega extension to continue to be a starter in the NFL for a high-profile team. So shout out to Jared Goff for his journey, and great for him. So got to open the show with that. Speaking of players that have not moved, let's talk about a player that will definitely move this offseason. 8 of the 9 players who were tagged this offseason, franchise tagged by their team, have now gone on to sign long-term deals. Kyle Duggar of the Patriots went for 4 years, $58 million. Michael Pittman, we talked about him on a previous show, stays with the Colts for 3 years, $70 million. Jalen Johnson stays with the Bears for $476. L'Jarius Sneed to the Titans, 4 years, $76 million. Justin Madubuike for the Ravens, 4 years, $98 million. Brian Burns to the Giants, 5 years, $141 million. Josh Allen, the defensive end, stays with the Jags for 5 years, $141 million. And most recently, Antoine Winfield Jr., the Super Bowl champion, stays with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for 4 years, $84 million. The last of the names, T Higgins, who is now the only one of those franchise tag guys without a deal, and he has now officially requested a trade out of the Cincinnati Bengals. And we talk about the Cincinnati Bengals. First off, the obvious question, what could possibly be the future of the Cincinnati Bengals behind Joe Burrow, who, let's not forget, Joe Burrow is no young spring chicken. This guy has dealt with so many injuries in his short-ish career already, some of it due to bad offensive line play. This man's already 27 years old, so we got to start thinking about the Cincinnati Bengals as a team that has to decide how they want to deal with the next 5 to 10 years of their franchise, because outside of the Joe Burrow-Ja'Marr Chase connection, there is no such thing as certainty on this team right now. And with T Higgins out of here, they're going to have to figure out how to get the best possible trade package for him, but also what their Super Bowl window actually is. And Joe Burrow famously said that the Cincinnati Bengals Super Bowl window is always open as long as I am at quarterback, which to a certain extent many can't agree with. But we've seen how competitive the NFL has been over the last few years, particularly when trying to beat Patrick Mahomes in the AFC. It would be a tough return back to a Super Bowl for the Cincinnati Bengals. And for that, they probably got to do it in the next couple of years with Joe Burrow still around his age apex. And speaking of T Higgins, got to talk about what it could mean for him. A few landing spots do come to mind. The most obvious to many people, and maybe obvious to me just because I am a fan of this team, is the New England Patriots. I mean, the Patriots, they've done a lot of bad things over the last several years in regards to advancing an offense, in regards to trying to replace a Tom Brady system with a system that can actually win at a high level or compete at a high level in the playoffs with the likes of the Joe Burrows of the world, the Josh Allens, the Miami Dolphins motion offense, and of course, Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, which is always the tallest of tasks. And this offseason, the Patriots have said, you know what, we're doing a whole revamp. They've kind of listened to, Matt Babbage, another host of Player Profiler Today, and I, both Patriots fans, and we both ranted on Player Profiler shows about how we need a revamp in coaching. We need a revamp in the athleticism. We need all kinds of change in direction when it comes to the offense. No pun intended. That's what the Patriots have been trying to do. They've been changing it. They made changes in the coaching staff, obviously, but they've also tried to reach out to other teams, such as the Eagles, to take their scouting head, stuff like that. So the Patriots are headed in the right direction philosophy-wise, and now they've gone ahead and drafted Drake May. They've drafted a guy with athleticism. There's questions about Drake May, no doubt. I personally, not 100% convinced that Drake May is necessarily going to be even the second best quarterback in this class, but this is not about my feelings. This is about the direction of the Patriots and what their philosophy is. They went aggressive with the wide receiver, added Jalen Polk, but personally, my favorite pick, Javon Baker, was a really interesting selection as well. T Higgins, obviously a candidate to be added to that room, and T Higgins great as a number 2. But in the Patriots room, could he be used as the number 1? We shall see. But there are also a couple of other teams that are less talked about. The New Orleans Saints have had Chris Olave, and it's clear that Olave is a number 1 in this league. Is he Ja'Marr Chase or Justin Jefferson? Probably not. But has he also been crippled by Poor quarterback play and a weak system. Absolutely, yes. And Chris Olave is a playmaker and a number one in this league. I'll just say it outright. They need a number two, and T Higgins could very well fit in with that number two role. Michael Thomas has had spurts of being alive from time to time over the last couple of years. Credit to Michael Thomas actually for being one of those wide receivers who has, had the diva tag, had the moments where he looks completely washed, but then come back and become super relevant in the fantasy game, but also in the real life game as an okay number two option for the Saints. But T Higgins, clearly the better option at this point of their careers right now. So the Saints could, if they're looking to be aggressive and use this as a current window for what could be considered a weak division, they could go after T Higgins. And of course, one that I think should be more obvious in this discussion should be a team that has had a dearth at wide receiver lately, traded away a big name wide receiver this offseason, replaced him at the draft, but still that wide receiver room isn't great. Even if Ladd McConkey pans out to be that guy, so to speak, the Los Angeles Chargers should be checking in with the Bengals to see if they can have a hand at T Higgins, because Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, they're gone. They just used their number one pick, or at least their first round draft pick on Joe Alt. But John Harbaugh is a smart guy. And when he said that, we consider offensive line to be an offensive weapon, he's right. But they should always look to upgrade that pass catching room as well with Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert, this is your Super Bowl window. You have Justin Herbert. I know there's no excuses for it. The Chargers, they'll have $98 million in effective cap space in 2025. So there is an opportunity there for to give T Higgins a juicy contract when free agency does hit. So that's another team that you should keep an eye on in the T Higgins sweepstakes. Jamie says, I just drafted Polk at the 307 today, then sold Demario Douglas for the 401 and took Javon Baker. Absolutely love that. I don't know about the Julian Polk pick. I actually thought the Patriots fumbled the bag by not getting themselves some Ladd McConkey. But I love Javon Baker, and I do think that he poses more upside than anybody else in this Patriots room. And if Drake May pans out, it's probably because Javon Baker is that guy. So I absolutely love that trade. I also think Demario Douglas is a great gadget in this league. Demario Douglas, in a sense, and it'd be crazy, saying this 2 years ago, but this is actually just true. Demario Douglas is Kadarius Toney if Kadarius Toney was good. So Demario Douglas, a great weapon for a lot of offenses in the NFL, but for the fantasy upside, I absolutely love Javon Baker, so I like that deal. And if Polk actually pans out as an early round draft pick, you have yourselves a nice little stack. And if Drake May is indeed if Drake May is indeed a top 2 quarterback of this class, the Patriots are exciting once again in fantasy. And I do also want to give a shout out to KJ Osborne, a super underrated player who could be one of the few recent Patriots wide receivers that are actually a good steal in fantasy drafts this season. Besides Jacoby Myers, the Patriots have not had much wide receiver talent recently, where you could actually feel confident, like, yeah, that could be a high upside fantasy pick. I feel that way about Javon Baker, and potentially as a late round, a pick for a redraft, specifically KJ Osborne. So I think those two are two names to keep an eye out for if you believe in Drake May. I want to talk about the next segment of our show, which is veteran to wide receivers. This will be a short segment. I just want to talk about the general concept of wide receivers who maybe at one point were considered good or were good or maybe both. And do want to give a shout out to these names. We are officially old. If you remember the time that these guys were considered high profile, especially for fantasy, Odell Beckham Jr. is headed to the Dolphins. I don't think this changes much in the fantasy world. You can take from that what you wish. Tua Tagovailoa can support Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. And obviously the running game with Tua at quarterback is going to be the priority. So Odell Beckham, if you want some nostalgia on your redraft teams and you get Odell as Mr. Irrelevant in your draft, good for you. The Giants, they pick up Allen Robinson, okay, great. There's nothing to discuss there. Malik Neighbors is that guy. We'll talk about Malik Neighbors in a minute as well. Malik Neighbors is that guy. He's the number one there. And Wan'Dale Robinson is good. That's about as much as the Giants could possibly support. And Allen Robinson should not be on your screen when you're drafting for 2024, to put it quite frankly. Zay Jones to the Cardinals is a little intriguing to me because Zay Jones is that kind of player who is just not going to win a lot of routes. He's just not a safe fantasy wide receiver. He's just not someone you draft in, he's just not someone you keep in Dynasty. This is just not a great player overall, but he has the athleticism to be a red zone threat in a good offense. And the Cardinals could classify as a very good offense in 2024 with, Trey McBride, Marvin Harrison, I'll say both of them elite talents there. So I really like this Cardinals offense behind Kyler Murray in 2024. And I think Zay Jones could be a best ball guy that you draft. And you look at the underdog boards. If y'all are using underdog, using promo code Underworld, you can draft best ball teams all offseason. And Zay Jones to the Cardinals, he's a wide receiver 84 being drafted. I'll just say it. That's good value for Zay Jones in best ball. So I think that's intriguing. We got Tyler Boyd going to the Titans. That's just a man move all around, which kind of summarizes the Titans offseason. They have Will Levis, who has a big arm, big upside, especially for fantasy purposes. And I think the Titans stacks could be interesting, but the way you stack Titans is you do it in best ball, and you do it with Will Levis, DeAndre Hopkins, and Calvin Ridley. And that's going to be about it. So Tyler Boyd just kind of there. He'll probably be good for about 5 to 10 fantasy points every week, but not sure you can get much upside out of him at this point. The Chargers, go ahead and get DJ Chark. That's just, it's whatever. DJ Chark, just a so deep threat. Of course, tied to Justin Herbert. That's way better than being tied to Bryce Young. But DJ Chark, also a purely best ball look, also a late round draft pick. For reference, Chark currently on Underdog going as the wide receiver 88, which seems about fair. Some wide receivers that go after him include Josh Reynolds who's now on the Broncos, Greg Dortch on that electric Cardinals offense, Brendan Rice also from the Chargers, and in some cases Elijah Moore on the Browns. So all guys that could potentially pour a little more upside than Chark. So that's how I feel about Chark. The Raiders go ahead and sign the absolutely washed, abysmal profile Michael Gallup. There's just no way around it. Michael Gallup is simply not good anymore. And I feel bad saying that because he's been through injuries and he was once a very great talent, but it just is what it is for fantasy purposes. The Raiders also go ahead and get Jalen Guyton. Just nothing to discuss there. And I'm obligated to mention that the Bills have themselves Chase Claypool, and Chase Claypool trending upwards on sleeper and ownership. Y'all are sickos, and you deserve to be punished. Jamie says, would you rather have Zay Jones or Michael Wilson for best ball? That's an interesting question for best ball and redraft. I'm gonna go ahead and take Michael Wilson here just because I like the talent way better. And of course, Michael Wilson has a little more. Gonna have a little more variance, so to speak. Zay Jones kind of more the red zone target, kind of fixed role, but also touchdowns are going to be hard to come by for the secondary options because Marvin Harrison, Kyler Murray, and Trey McBride, those are three options that are more likely to hit the end zone every single week than any of these other guys. So when you're talking about the difference between maybe 3 touchdowns and 6 touchdowns, I'd rather take the guy who's just the better player and can win you routes. So Michael Wilson. Jamie says, I just sold Michael Gallup a few minutes ago for $5 a fab since I was dropping him anyway. That is a huge win, Jamie. Let's talk about the 2024 season real quick. We've got a season preview a little bit. There are a lot of exciting matchups that have been leaked. The Ravens schedules, particularly, Ravens fans got to be a little annoyed because their schedule includes 10 games against teams that made the playoffs last season. That's the most of any team. The Ravens offseason has been relatively dull, and that's just not great news for the Ravens. So if they get off to any bit of a slow start, it's football. It's the NFL. Injuries can happen. They could be in trouble. So the Ravens, not necessarily in the best situation there. On the more exciting news, the Bills and Dolphins will be the first Thursday night football game of the season on Amazon in week 2. That should be a good contest. Always a good fight between those two teams. The Chiefs will travel to San Francisco to take on the 49ers in a Super Bowl rematch in week 7 on Fox. And on the call, will be Tom Brady. That should be exciting. Aaron Rodgers will make his return on Monday Night Football. And Leonard Floyd, the player who sacked him and resulted in the injury, he will be on the other side since he now plays for the 49ers. And we got some season openers as well in week 1. Ravens versus Chiefs in week 1. Speaking of the Ravens having a tough schedule, right off the bat, a gauntlet facing the Chiefs. Friday afternoon in Brazil, we'll have the Packers versus the Eagles. The Packers, Super Bowl candidate Packers, by the way. Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern time on Fox, we'll have the Cowboys versus Browns. And Monday Night Football will be that Jets 49ers game in week 1. Jamie says, nobody's talking about Paris Campbell to the Eagles. Do you think he'll have a role in the slot? It's a great question because the Eagles, if you ask any Eagles fan about what they thought of the receivers outside of A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, they will, you know, we know Philadelphia fans, they'll let their opinion be heard. It was not good at all. Paris Campbell is a guy that, you know, people have listed as, you know, their truther of Paris Campbell. Let's just cut right to the chase. This is not a great talent. Will there be opportunities on the Eagles? Yes. Will there be is Paris Campbell an upgrade over the Quez Watkins of the world and Julio Jones of 2023? Yes. For that alone, yes, I think he'll be relevant, but also, unless you're in a deep league, is there really upside with Paris Campbell when you have Jalen Hurts, Dallas Goedert, Saquon Barkley, A.J. Brown, and Devontae Smith all competing for end zone touches? Probably not. Could we make some money by betting Paris Campbell touchdown the 1 or 2 weeks he does score? Perhaps, but I don't think Paris Campbell is worth rostering unless you are in an ultra deep league. There's just too much competition there. Last segment of the show, I want to talk about some odds that are on the sports book for the NFL season. We already talked about one team that I think is, you know, in previous shows, we've talked about the Houston Texans. Let's just get that out of the way. The Houston Texans are contenders. This seems to be consensus now. They have had perhaps the most proactive, the most exciting offseason of anybody in the NFL. They are contenders, and they are rising up the boards as we speak, as they should. The 49ers and Chiefs, depending on what book you are, they are essentially the two favorites to win the Super Bowl for good reason. The 49ers roster is just stacked from top to bottom, and the Chiefs, I'll say the same thing I said the show after the Super Bowl. Last year, you know, the Chiefs roster that just won the Super Bowl might be the worst roster that Patrick Mahomes is going to have for the next decade. That's how scary this Chiefs organization is. So the Chiefs should rightfully be favorites to win the Super Bowl. Even if Rashee Rice misses the whole season, it's possible that Xavier Worthy could just fit in with that role and fit in just like a glove. And realistically, it shouldn't matter because Justin Watson and Marquez Valdes-Scantling and company were looking awesome in the playoffs because they had Patrick Mahomes. That should summarize how I feel about the Chiefs. We have the Ravens up there as well, but like I said, they've got a tough regular season schedule. Cincinnati Bengals have questions to answer as well. They only drafted one wide receiver in the draft. It was Jermaine Burton, who I do like as a player, but he's going to potentially be the only replacement for T Higgins. Got the Detroit Lions, who worked on their defense a little bit. Got the Buffalo Bills, but I want to go down the odds board just a little bit and talk about the Super Bowl contending Green Bay Packers. I want to repeat something I mentioned a few shows ago that I don't want to get swept under the rug. The Green Bay Packers showed in the playoffs last year that when you tie a good quarterback with great weapons and they're all healthy, you can do wonders, right? And that's just what it is. That's just the truth. The reason the Packers did not get to the Super Bowl was because, one, their receivers were not fully healthy, and two, because their defense had several issues, and that got down to coaching. You know what they did this offseason is they changed their defensive coordinator and they changed their strength and conditioning coach. The Green Bay Packers at plus 2,000 to win the Super Bowl is probably my favorite look right now as a quote-unquote long shot. I would not be surprised if we see the Packers represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. One other team that is a complete and utter long shot, and it's highly likely, so many things have to go right for this team to even win a couple of playoff games, but I do want to mention them as someone that you should not completely just ignore, because they still have a good quarterback. They still have a great offensive core. They nearly made the playoffs last season. They've won some playoff games in the last few years, and they actually competed in a playoff game the last time they were in there against a team that eventually, were Super Bowl contenders. The Seattle Seahawks, I'm going to keep tooting the horn that one of the reasons the Seahawks have not sniffed a Super Bowl appearance over the last few years was because of Pete Carroll and his non-progressive play calling, his coaching staff's non-progressive play calling. They addressed that this offseason. The Seattle Seahawks are definitely contenders to make some noise in the playoffs. Could they be potentially the Green Bay Packers in a sense of 2024? I did want to mention those. Also wanted to leave y'all with one of these thoughts is this might be one of the most wide open rookie of the year races we've ever seen, especially on the offensive side, because you do have Caleb Williams as the front runner for good reason. I think he's going to win it at plus 170 odds on FanDuel. Caleb Williams definitely the front runner as he should be. He's got weapons. They're aggressively saying, our window starts now. Caleb Williams is starting. That means our window is now. But I do want to mention that there are so many good rookies in this class. Malik Neighbors actually had a bet going with Jaden Daniels. Malik Neighbors is listed at plus 1,400. Jaden Daniels is listed at plus 1,600. Malik Neighbors had a bet with Jaden Daniels, his LSU boy, about who is going to win Rookie of the Year between the two of them. And then recently it came out that Malik Neighbors said, I took back the bet because I did not know about the NFL gambling policy. I'm going to call Captain Cap on that. I'm going to say that either one, you're still doing the bet under the table, or two, you called it off because you realized who was throwing you the football, and you saw the betting odds, and you saw Jaden Daniels is in a great situation, and you pulled away. I do want to mention two names that do stand out to me as rookies that could potentially shock the world and enter this race should something happen to Caleb Williams. First off, we already mentioned Ladd McConkey as the top of the show. There's not much target competition there right now. If they add T Higgins, of course, there will be more. But right now, Ladd McConkey is at plus 3,000 on FanDuel. I think that's disrespectful. I think if he ends up going into the season as the second option pass catcher in Los Angeles, this guy is catching passes from Justin Herbert. I mean, let's be real here. Anybody catching passes from Justin Herbert who actually has route running talent and athleticism that Ladd McConkey does, which Quentin Johnston didn't. He did not have the route running prowess that Ladd McConkey does. He should be in the conversation. So I did want to bring him up as well. And then the longest of long shots, the guy with a chip on his shoulder, the guy who's wearing jersey number 10 because 10 wide receivers were drafted ahead of him. He's now tied to a quarterback that showed in his brief stint as a rookie that he can throw the football with the best of them. It's Adonai Mitchell. He was drafted in the late second round. I thought he would go late first round. He was apparently not drafted because of, personal stuff and health issues with the diabetes. Adonai Mitchell can flat out play football. 62nd percentile college dominator. This guy earns targets, 97th percentile or 98th percentile speed score, 91st percentile catch radius. Who else is catching the football besides Michael Pittman and Adonai Mitchell? Alec Pierce for the long bomb, yes, but Adonai Mitchell has the potential to be perhaps the steal of the NFL draft when it comes to rookie performance in 2024. So I did want to mention him as another offensive weapon that could end up being the chip on the shoulder guy that just flat out balls all season, and NFL teams say, why the hell did we pass up on it? I want to close the show thanking everybody who tuned in with us. We got hundreds of people watching in chat. I'm a little late to catching up with the last few comments. What up, Chef? Thank you, Chef TPDB, for always being in the chat and supporting. Jeff also says Ahaan Smith is who you want for the slot in Philly, for sure. And Rubio says not with Geno. We'll see about that. Geno Smith getting slept on again. That was today's Player Profiler Today show. If you want NFL offseason content every single day of the week, head on to the Player Profiler news channel to watch Player Profiler Today with all our beautiful hosts. Let's see where T Higgins ends up. But for now, we'll see you in the next episode.
Hey, I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in. It's important to me that all of our media be free. This is only possible because of you allowing a true independent sports media enterprise to thrive unlike any other in the business. So please subscribe to the All In package to continue to make all of this possible, to ensure that all of our stats, information, data, content is available to you, especially you, the people that get the site and get the show.